Well, welcome again into the mid-Norfolk farm garden. We're going to do a walking tour this morning, taking you around. I'm hands-free this morning, so it's going to be interesting, trying this new video technique for the first time. This is a new courtyard area that's been curated this year between the two barns, the new one just to my right here, and the one that we've had now for almost 2 years, with first of the hollyhocks just coming up in front of it. They've done quite well here, considering the builders have still been landscaping and using this area quite extensively. A few of them are gone over. We've got a little bit of dieback on one of them just along here. Not entirely certain what caused this, but sometimes this just happens with hollyhocks. You can see dead right the way down to the crown, grew right up but then never flowered, so that needs taking out completely. There's very little chance of that reshooting. The little Japanese anemone that came over from Gardeners Cottage, doing very well here, just getting established this year. Again, hard building rubble and compacted hardcore under there, so it's not looking as lush as some of the other ones, but I think it will do okay there. Just gets the morning sun in about an hour at this time of day. Let's make our way through into the main body of the garden. As you can see, a lot of the late summer herbaceous got a dominance of yellow in this garden at the moment with this Rebeckia. I don't think it's the classic brown-eyed Susan variety, this one. Grows to about 4 or 5 feet, and the centre really isn't brown enough for brown-eyed Susan, but the thing about Rebeckias is, my advice is don't be too precious when you go to the garden centre to buy one. If you've got a specific variety or name, you're likely not to be able to find what you want. But look what's flowering well, and this time of year is a great time to go and just have a look at these plants and see them with some indication of what you're going to get. This one grows very, very well in here. If anything, they spread out quite naturally, don't take a lot of taming. Unlike the goldenrod just behind it, you can see this one tends to come up just about everywhere when you get it established, but it's worth growing because of these lovely spires of yellow flower, and then the frothy seed heads that, if you leave them to stand right the way through into the autumn and early winter, give you that lovely structural element in the garden, whereas everything else in here has usually been cut down by then. Also doing well in this border is this lovely purple loosestrife. Again, we've had a very wet early summer and spring here, and these plants, which are sort of moisture loving, have really done well this year, whereas usually they'd be quite struggling usually in this garden, because it tends to be on the dry side, this border. We've got this, I'm going to have to look up the name of this. Do you see the sort of thistle-like yellow plant? We've got an area that we moved out of this garden when it was replanted. I'll go and show you that now, and if anybody knows the name of this one, I'm sure if I put it through Google Lens it'll probably tell me, but I don't know it myself. Well, I did just try Google Lensing this one. I've got no internet out here and no 5G signal, so try again later is the advice I can give you on the name of this one, but do let me know. Grows to about 5 foot, and these plants were transplanted into this area when it was dug up and divided. It does divide very easily. It does have a little tendency to do this though, brown off, and don't think it, well, I've certainly not noticed it seeding anywhere, so division tends to be the best way of growing this one. I'm stood right in the middle of what was the old vegetable garden. Still got some fruit bushes around here on the back of the new converted barns. These borders really have matured very well over the last 2 years since we started planting them. Really, as the inspiration was a cutting garden, but to be honest, most of the plants now in here have been overtaken by some of the self-seeded cottage varieties, so not much cutting's gone on in here. Let's go and have a look and walk you through this one. These Crocosmia Fireglow were really spectacular about a week ago. They don't last particularly long, Crocosmia. Open very gradually along the stems of the flowers to the tips, and then form these little seed pods. Again, never seen Crocosmia seed. If you want to divide those, dig them up, and you'll have little corms all around the base of what you planted, which can be divided and spread. It's got quite a bit of oxeye still flowering in here, and on the base, grey leaf sage doing very well, just cascading over onto the gravel path. Rose campion really mugging everything else in its way. A lovely spider's web in here, doing very well, and that will continue to trickle flower for quite some months yet before browning off, and then that can be removed right the way down to the base. It will have seeded itself profusely. My idea of planting a whole row of Cicericium along the front border really didn't come to fruition. I tried, but I'm afraid they've been mugged in part. As you can see, they've flowered quite well now, browning off the leaves a little bit and seeding out, but the way everything cascades forward really doesn't allow me to plant that sort of upright border. I suppose if I was more prone to cutting things back and pruning hard, I could have managed that. We're going to try a slightly different approach in this little area down to the corner. It's a bit dry down here, particularly at this time of year. You can see the soil, even though we've been watering, is very, very dry. We did initially try with some catmints in this area, and there's just not enough light for them to do really well. You can see they're getting a leggy but not really flowering. So we're going to try some bearded iris in here. Again, a bit of a punt, because without that sun to mature the rhizomes, I don't know how they're going to flower. But when these feverfew, golden feverfew, have finished, we'll probably remove these plants, which we have grown very successfully as a low little hedge. They give a lovely button appearance with the foliage during the early spring months, and then grow to around 2.5 to 3 foot and give this profusion of little daisy-like flowers. Started to cut this back and tidy up, because we are increasingly planting this up, so we're getting a view from the new barns, which are just about finished now, as you can see in the background there. But I'm getting distracted. Let's go and do a walk through this little area, which is the main garden we view from the barn inside. A lovely large flowered daisy picks up at this time of year from the ox eyes. This is planted here. It doesn't get provided with much support other than what naturally grows around it. You can see it's depending on these foxgloves, which are now just about finished seeding and can be removed, cut back, but I'll probably only cut them back to around 2.5 to 3 foot, so that they continue to support these other herbaceous plants we've got in here. You can see them cascading forward onto the gravel again. Importance of putting a decent width path in, it couldn't be better illustrated than by this little area. A narrow path. Again, we didn't, by the time this garden was thought about really, it was planted on either side with a lot of plants which we didn't want to lose, so we put a narrow, probably about 4 foot path in, and as you can see, it's completely obstructed from this angle at this time of year by tansy, which isn't my favourite of plants. Very easy to grow, in fact very difficult to kill, to be honest. If you struggle with your garden plants, get somebody to pull you up a bit of tansy and you'll have a friend for life. It runs all over, seeds profusely, but it's mainly the root runners that drive me mad. I'm constantly pulling it out earlier in the season. It does tend to get very much taller than this if it's allowed to grow naturally. These have probably been pulled or cut off earlier in the season to get them to bunch and basically form a lower growth which will support itself. But we'll let it stay there. Some Alstroemeria struggling in here, a little sort of blue leafed sea thistle here. Just again struggling for space in this planting, and a little, I think this is scabious. I think so. Just flowering nicely again. But the dominant plant in here at this time of year is this flowering sorrel in the backdrop and growing through these massive self-seeded bronze fennel plants, which really set all the structure in this garden. There's probably far too many of them, if I'm honest. We need to thin these out, because again every year it seeds profusely with young plants coming up everywhere, and I can show you those in the gravel in just a minute. So a lot of weeding to be done in this garden really, a lot of cutting back and deadheading. The campions, particularly these rose campions, you can see we've got mixed one here with white and red. They will be individual plants here. The red tends to flower a little earlier in our garden than the white and seed well, but these are the seed heads. They need to dry off a little more than that, and then we can just start crushing those and we'll get thousands of little tiny black seeds coming through, which I love rose campion. It gives you that lovely silver furry leafed ball on the base. You can just see one down here. That's the sort of appearance you get. And then these spires of really bright flowers in those two tones. Sometimes they cross and you get a hybrid in between, but mainly it's one or the other with rose campion. This is what happens in our gravel pathways if you abandon them to the builders for a couple of months. Just look at the profusion of fennel seedlings that are coming up here, absolutely hundreds of them. Easy to pull up. If you want to transplant fennel though, you need to do it when it's just one or two leaves, as this plant is here, because they put this massive long taproot down. I know this is a little baby seedling, but you can see it's already broken off there, and that will stunt that plant if you do try and transplant it. So even younger ones than that, really, something like this, if I can get it up. And you need to get, even at that stage, they're deeply rooted. Nope, it's broken off. So if you are transplanting these, make sure that you get a good little trail and dig down so that you're getting that taproot out. But even better, just collect some seed off them earlier or end of the season. These seed really well. You can see the seeds already forming on these flat plants. You see that seedling coming on? These will all form fennel, edible fennel seeds. We collect them and use them in the kitchen later in the season, but probably only a tiny percentage of them. I showed you this Ethel rose earlier this month when it was flowering. Now it's finished just being dead-headed and tidied up. Do need to get some of these really strong young new stems tied down, and we try and pull them down as much as we can. Just look at that one. That's a typical Ethel stem going away and trying to escape towards the barn. But that's an ideal one, coming up from the base to pull right the way along as a new primary growth to fill in sort of lower down. Everything wants to grow at the top, doesn't it, to get the maximum light. But if you can pull them down, they'll break and give you multiple flower stems next year. So that's a good tip and a good job to do, and I want to get that one tied in before it's across the path and we're walking into it, because Ethel is a sharp rose, well thorned. This new little area we've created just on the side of this service area behind the barn. It's, as you can see, we're not tidy gardeners. We've got plenty of jobs in progress at any one time, and it's nice to have some pots and a load of watering cans and an area where you can just pile things up as you're getting them established. We've got cuttings going in here, other plants that we're just preparing to collect some seed off. That's what we're doing with these candelabra prinulas. Just waiting for this seed to set, and then we'll collect those and spread them in a moist gravel area in some shade. They tend to seed very well along the back of the barn here. The two New Dawn roses have flowered spectacularly on this north face. There's the aspect with the little trellises. I mean, it's a small trellis and a big rose. New Dawn's not the largest of climbers, but it's still a very vigorous rose for this area. But we're going to keep these tightly pruned against it. It's an absolutely beautiful rose to grow and will flower well on a north face, as you can see. Trickle flower right the way through to the first frosts. Hydrangeas have loved the wet weather we've been having, growing really well and giving us this lovely big display of lovely white heads at this time of year. We've got two of them, one there and one on the other side of the aspect. This is the path aspect. As you say, we're ready to deadhead these geraniums now. There's still a little bit of colour in ones like this, but otherwise this is a stage you really need to start cutting them hard back. Very late this year because the spring was quite cool, so they didn't flower as early as they normally do, and if we'd be more cruel with these and cut them back very early, we'd have cut an awful lot of flower off. You see they've just continued to trickle flower, which you always think, oh, I'll just wait till next week and they'll be finished and I can cut them back, and they've just continued to flower in this sort of not spectacular but very pretty and dainty fashion over the last couple of months. But the oxeyes need clearing out, some of those fennels need clearing out, some deadheading to do, and just general tidying up at this time of year. And then we're watering now because it's not rained here now for almost 10 days and there's none on the medium term forecast. My hosta pots on the back of the barn have been decimated by the slugs this year, despite my best efforts in growing them over gravel. I think I've got too many of them in too close proximity, which has been the problem here, and that's allowed the slugs to make their way up the wall and on adjoining plants and over onto the actual leaves, whereas my normal trick of growing them in pots on gravel really is not particularly slug friendly and discourages them. We usually do far better in this area. But the plants have done well in themselves. A little bit of browning on the giant leaf variety along the end there. I think that was me not watering them quite as much as I should have done. Got out of the habit of watering the pots this year with it continuously raining for most of May and June. And then all of a sudden it dries up and you take your eye off the ball and you've got a browned off hosta leaf. So do remember to water your pots and keep those well watered during the summer months that hopefully we're going to enjoy here for the next couple of weeks. Thanks for watching.